This is Alan Stanwyk, and I have a little proposition for you. I'll give you $1,000 just to listen to Laker Jim's Fletchcast. I'd suggest bringing your rubber gloves.
Broadcasting live and around the world. From Cabana One, the only podcast that's all ball bearings. Your ultimate source for everything Fletch.
Moon River. Whew. Thank you, Doc. You ever serve time?
Laker Jim and his beat reporters will stop at nothing to make sure Fletch lives forever. They don't shower much. This is Fletchcast.
Thank you, Sammy, and welcome to Season 2 of Fletchcast. Welcome back, Fletch fans. I'm your host, Laker Jim. And joining me, two men who never like to discuss business on the lanai, Jake and Big Bob. Boys, how was your break?
It was great. I finished my refresher course, and I am ready to go.
Now, many of you don't know that Bob was darn near death recently, and he wasn't afraid to admit to me that he had COVID and where he got it.
Trembling Hills, though, I think was a big benefit for him, though. I think it really paid off, right?
Well, thank God he stopped in his tracks.
Yeah.
The end was almost very sudden.
He had COVID for 3 weeks.
The very end, Jim. The very end. Was
I see.
Almost very sudden. Almost very sudden.
You were in intensive care for 8 weeks, right?
No, they didn't have any beds.
Did you name drop the podcast?
I said, you know who I am. I'm Big Bob from.
Did you?
They didn't seem to care or know what I was talking about.
They released the dogs to chase you into the parking lot.
Come on, smile. Say flesh.
But regardless, I'm extremely down because I know while I was away, I did miss probably the biggest episode to date.
That's right. We decided to start off Season 2 with a bang. Now, while Bob was dealing with the mutation of syphilis and COVID, Jake and I sat down with the man himself, Alan Stanwyk, and we asked him straight to his face, are you involved with any improprieties?
Alan Stanwyk is not involved in any improprieties.
Now, before we get into that, we actually have some news. So why don't we start with some breaking news? Jake, this is big stuff.
Sounds great.
The Jane Doe Report.
I'm turning the story over to a professional reporter.
So Greg Mottola was on Twitter last week, and someone had reached out to him and asked about a possible trailer for Confess Fletch. That is still in limbo as we wait to see who picks up the distributing rights. He actually mentioned to us via messaging that next week, so the third week of January, Confess Fletch will be viewed by distributors, and then hopefully after that we'll have a better idea of when we possibly will see a trailer and then the inevitable release. But during that conversation, he actually mentioned that he was in negotiations to direct already a follow-up, Fletch's Fortune.
Wow.
Which I think would be, and I've said it in the past, a perfect sequel to Confess Fletch. And I'm very excited about that. That obviously means that what they're seeing from Confess Fletch is good.
Now, is Fletch's Fortune, is the fortune itself the Stanwyk fortune?
No, it is not. In fact, the book itself is really great. It takes place at a journalism convention in Virginia, and it's very, very funny. And I really think it would translate very well onto the big screen. It was technically the third book that Gregory MacDonald wrote. He wrote Fletch, he wrote Confess Fletch, and then Fletch's Fortune. Fletch's Fortune takes place right after Confess Fletch. So it is the sequel in book form as well. And like I said, is just the logical follow-up.
Which is great because then including the original 1985 Fletch, we really then have the first three books in the story.
as far as they're written, not in timeline as we know, but yes, as far as in writing order. Yeah, Fletch was 74, Confess Fletch was 76, Fletch's Fortune was 78.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's exciting. That's really exciting.
Yeah.
Jake, does Fletch's Fortune follow the same storyline the way that the other books do? You know, traditional mystery having to be solved by Fletch,
Yes.
goes
Yes.
undercover.
He doesn't go undercover in Fletch's Fortune. He is you can read the synopsis. He pretty much has blackmailed to attend a journalism convention in Virginia by the CIA. The CIA would like to have information to possibly future blackmail journalists. So they blackmail Fletch that because they know that he has picked up a lot of money, the money from Alan Stanwyk that he got in the original movie, but he's never paid taxes on it. So they basically blackmail him to go to this convention in Virginia and to set up all these bugging devices. So all the journalists in each room can be recorded. There's a murder while he's there. And it's really funny. It's really well done. It's one of my favorite Fletch books after the original.
All right. Well, listen, that's great news that Fletch is moving forward.
I'm very encouraged. And as I said, the fact that he's already negotiating for another one means that it must have turned out really well. And we knew it would, just with the caliber of talent behind the project itself.
And we've also reconfirmed that Greg Mottola will be a guest on the show in the future.
Yes.
We reconfirmed.
Yes.
You reconfirmed this morning.
As they get closer to release date, he said yes, in all capitals.
Yes.
So you know it's legit. If he wrote back in all caps.
This is breaking news for me. I didn't know this. You guys didn't tell me this.
Well, Bob, we only wake you up for the important meetings.
Well, I appreciate that. But that's huge. I didn't know that. I'm excited to hear that.
Yeah, we have a million questions for Greg Mottola. But you know what? That's the perfect segue to what you've all been waiting for. Sitting Down with Stanwyk, up next.
You forgot your rubber gloves. Catch on real quick, Mr. Nugent. Now, if you would be so kind as to put your passport on my desk.
For those of you who follow Utah indie rock, that's the band Laserfang with their hit song Alan Stanwyk. And if that's not segue enough, let me finally introduce our first guest, our first cast member to be on the Fletch cast. Stanwyk himself, Mr. Tim Matheson.
Yes.
Howdy. Nice to see you. Laker Jim and Jake, how are you guys?
We're
Fantastic.
good. We're doing good.
Good.
Now, the irony of you being our first guest is deeper than just you being one of our favorite characters. 23 years ago, I wrote you a letter. And in that letter, I mentioned that I had a Fletch website, and I wanted to interview you for the website. Now, my version of interviewing you was sending you questions. Well, believe it or not, you wrote me back.
Oh, my God.
And you answered every one of my questions in your own handwriting. And here's the letter right here. I still have it saved.
Oh, my God.
It meant so much to me that, yes, granted, you tried to kill our hero, burn up his body, and steal his identity. But at the core, I knew you must be a really great guy.
Thank you.
Is that something you do regularly when fans write you? Because that could go either way, honestly, when somebody sends a letter to your house.
I try to. I absolutely try to. You know, I had worked with some country Western stars, you know, like Reba McEntire and a few other guys, and Hoyt Axton, and they all, you know, they'll do a 2 or 3 hour show and then spend 2 or 3 more hours greeting and taking pictures and signing autographs after the show. And many actors do that on Broadway, or they come out of the theater, they'll spend another hour out there signing autographs and saying hi to people. And who are, you know, so I just think it's, yeah, I mean, I do, because also it's the only feedback you get from film. I mean, you do a movie and it's out there, but in theater, you get an instant feedback. Well, that stunk, or you get a laugh or whatever. But in film, you don't, and you don't know how it sort of resonates for the audience until you talk to people.
That's great.
Now we're talking in the late 90s, so social media didn't exist. It took a lot more effort to respond to fans back then. And I just wanted to tell you, it meant a lot to me then. It still means a lot to me now.
Thank you.
So why don't we start from the beginning? Not so much the beginning of your career, but the beginning of Fletch. Okay. How did the role come about? How did the audition process come about? How did you hear about it?
I was just offered the part, and I knew Michael Ritchie, the director, who I had almost worked with. I'd gotten to know early on, who was just the tallest, brightest, most articulate director I'd ever worked with. He was and knew where the comedy was. I mean, he was brilliant. But I was doing a play in New York, True West, Sam Shepard play with Daniel Stern. And so it looked like it wasn't going to happen. I mean, so I got this offer and I was looking to do something different and interesting in my career, always. So the guy said, okay, we'll work it out. You'll fly out. We'll fly you out private after your Sunday night show, like 9:00, get you on a plane. You'll work the next day, Monday, and then fly back to New York, either Monday night or Tuesday morning. I forget which it was. And go to work Tuesday night, which was when my play was back on. So I did that. I remember we had to stop like in Kansas City to get more fuel because it was a smaller jet. And I got like 2 hours sleep. And then we went right down to the pier, Santa Monica Pier, and underneath there. And, and so, but I loved working with Chevy. I mean, he was, he was a huge star at that point. He had his ups and downs, but that was, I think, of his two greatest roles, Clark Griswold and Fletch were the two that he just nailed it. He just was as good as you could get.
No, there was nobody more perfect than Chevy because only he could deliver the dialogue that you wish you said in the situation, but you actually only repeat back to yourself in the car ride home after the fact.
Wow, I got only an idiot. Yeah.
So were you familiar with the character at all of Fletch when the script, was in your direction?
No, it was
because at the time the book.
I was doing my play and other things. I was getting into directing a little bit, and so I was fully occupied. I didn't get a chance. I wasn't real. I was like ignorant of the the Fletch history and how successful it was, and but the script was great. The script just was great. And, and working with Chevy, because the interesting thing about Chevy was he didn't really consider himself an actor, so he wanted to engage on some real visceral level with whoever he was playing a scene with. And I guess he and Michael Ritchie had developed because Chevy had done a couple, I think Under the Rainbow, done a couple of movies where he had total control and everything, and this was one where I think Michael said to him, no, we're going to do this my way. I'll give you a take, but first we're going to do it my way. And then I'll give you a free for all. You can do whatever you want. Right. So when we got to his close-ups, he said, just say something and anything to me. Just throw crap at me. Anything you can think of.
What, are you doped up now? Don't talk to me like that, ass face. I don't work for you yet.
Off camera, when I was off camera, we play the master scene. We maybe do my coverage, whatever. Right. And then we do Chevy's. And I would just say the most vile, horrible, I won't repeat any of things, just try and break him up or crack him up or a dig or whatever,
Yeah.
And call him Dan Aykroyd or something. I don't know. And but just anything to try and elicit a real response.
Right.
And I think a lot of that or some of that is in there. He would just, whoa, he would just react to it. But it was pretty much a whirlwind that day. I think I remember the scenes under the pier because that's such a striking location.
Right.
Excuse me. Yeah, I have something I'd like to discuss with you. What's that? We can't talk about it here.
Why not?
Because we can.
Are you on a scavenger hunt, or just forget to pay my dinner check? I mean, I'd be happy to pay it.
I want you to come to my house, and then we'll talk.
You got the wrong gal, fella.
I think there were other scenes that were shot, but it was very sporadic for me to do that. I mean, so I went back to New York, and then I don't think I came back out again until we went to the former Hearst mansion, where we shot, in that incredible entryway in the library.
What a coincidence.
What?
I came this close to buying this place. Then I found out Hopalong Cassidy killed himself here. Blew it for me.
Who?
Hopalong Cassidy. Bow and arrow. Very weird.
The house that Hearst bought from Marion Davies, and it's the Godfather house.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's an amazing piece of property.
Yeah, that's one thing we were going to ask you. We weren't sure if just the exterior was the house or the interior was as well.
It was all there. That library. I mean, you just, oh my God, people live like this. I mean, it was not quite. It was on a par with Hearst Castle, but not. It wasn't as grand, but it was an incredibly beautiful home.
So from what you're saying is you shot the one scene under the pier just in one day and then went back and then came back to shoot the rest of the film, or did you go back and forth more than twice?
I don't recall going back and forth again. I think that it was. I mean, I was towards the end of the run, maybe the play, and 3 or 4 weeks, and I didn't have to work and on Fletch when I came. Then I came back out for Fletch, and I finished. I remember finishing because we had a scene with Joe Don Baker. We were down in Long Beach or something, and the first stuff we did was at the Davies house, in Marion Davies' house, when I first came out. We did that, and I did but I didn't really have that much to do, and many of my scenes took place at the mansion, so we shot that maybe in a day or two, and I can't remember working more than 4 or 5 days on the movie, and but one of the quirks was I finished the picture. Finished whatever we had finished shooting, and then I took my mother and my sister to Hawaii for a little vacation. And my agent called me and said, "Hey, they need you back on Fletch. They're going to reshoot this." It was something at the Marion Davies house, which was an extraordinary expense because it cost then $15,000 a day, which was unheard of. So today it would be $100,000 to the location. And I said, well, geez, I just, now this can be told. I just got here with my mother and my sister. I can't leave. And he goes, and I said, what do I do? And he goes, don't worry, I'll handle it. And I said, oh, okay. And I said, he says, when are you going to be back? And I said, well, I'll be back on next Sunday. He goes, okay, all right. Prepare to work the following week. And John Gaines was my agent at Agency for the Performing Arts, and he was just a real character. And he said, I told him I couldn't get in touch with you. Oh, yeah, he's out of touch. He's on the islands. They don't have phones. It's whatever. He can work these dates though. And they said, okay, that's fine. And it worked out. And we went back to the Davies house and shot, I'm not sure, pickups or alternate scenes. I'm not sure exactly what we shot, but we did redo some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. With today, you can't use that excuse anymore that we can't get in touch with you. There's a million ways.
That's right. They blew my cover. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Hey, do you remember what you shot with Joe Don Baker? Because I'd emailed you a photo that we had found. Yeah. It looks like you and him on top of a building or something like that.
Or a bridge or something like that.
But do you remember what that might have been?
There was a parking structure or it was a bridge, I think. And that it was, I don't know if it was Long Beach. I don't honestly remember where that was, but it was such a treat to work with him. I mean, he was couldn't have been funnier and nicer, and what a good actor.
Put the gun down, Alan. I can take care of them.
Yeah.
But I honestly, the stuff we shot by the beach was not at an elevation like this. This might have been somewhere downtown Los Angeles, perhaps. Honestly, It was such a whirlwind that I don't really remember what was going on, in these specific scenes.
And Fletch is one of those movies that the lost footage is just gone.
It is.
I mean, they shot stuff with, they shot a whole sequence with Tommy Lasorda and Fletch and Chevy and
Chevy in a hockey uniform walking down downtown LA.
Yeah, because
that is just gone. We've had stills and
oh my God. What happened is I went over to Universal to do some research on Animal House, and I wanted to get the production notes, the backstage stuff with the prop notes and wardrobe and all that stuff, and the budgetary notes, usually, which they, they're in-depth sort of looks into what happened in the picture to go over and how long to shoot this day and that. All gone. They told me, I guess, when GE had owned the studio for a short period of time, they just swept it clean. They just said, it's all fire hazard. Let's get rid of that stuff. And then I don't think they photocopied anything. So all of that stuff was lost. And then there was a fire on the back lot at Universal where they lost a lot of negatives, and they lost a lot of recordings and a lot of, I guess, outtakes and things like that, so it's a shame. It's really a shame because Chevy's offstage stuff was brilliant. I
can imagine. You brought up Animal House, right? So that's a good segue to a question that we have for you.
Sure.
Okay. Stephen First. Okay. He played Ken Dorfman.
Yes.
Okay, this guy is a real zero. That's true.
His brother in the movie was Fred Dorfman.
His brother was a 59, Fred Dorfman.
Can you confirm that he is indeed the brother of Fred the Dorfman from Fletch?
It's been a wonderful ceremony so far. Here on behalf of our own Fred the Dorfman.
I'm sure that it's sprinkled with, and he was a legacy too.
He was a legacy.
So I'm sure, there are all those kinds of references, and that could be more Michael Ritchie than Chevy, because I don't think Chevy still had hard feelings. I don't think he had hard feelings about Animal House, but he never really acknowledged it. I guess he and, Belushi were on the outside. I'm not sure, but there's a famous story that you probably heard where the studio wanted Chevy to play Otter in Animal House.
Curiously, she said we had roughly the same build, from the waist up, I imagine.
Landis didn't want him. Landis wanted to surround Belushi with real actors and keep him focused on the scene so that it didn't turn into sketch stuff. And he thought having Chevy there would just be not good. And so that Landis took him to lunch with some of the other producers, I think the studio head, and said, hey, you know what, Chevy, this would be great for your career. You'd be one of about 8 guys in this movie. You don't have to work that hard. There's a lot of people who have others, so you're going to be part of the group. It's a good part, but it's part of the group. What do you know, otherwise you do like this movie with Goldie Hawn, and it's, it's you and her, and you're the star and she's the star. It's a romantic comedy. You don't want to do that. You want to be in our gang comedy, and Chevy's going like, I'm going to be with Goldie Hawn. So Landis juked him, out and tricked him into turning it down. Although that's the way Landis tells it, so I'm not so sure exactly what happened.
Little reverse psychology.
Ivan Reitman kicked him. He said, "Shut up," because everybody else just wanted to get the movie made, and they didn't think they weren't going to be moving ahead without something like Chevy. That's why Sutherland was in it, because they needed a name. He said, "Get us a name. Give somebody that somebody will know." And so that's when they got Donald Sutherland. That's when John Landis called him up because he was an acquaintance of his. He said, "Do me a favor."
There was no bad blood, though. Chevy wasn't jealous of you, though, when you came back on set taking his role.
Oh no. He was a star, and I'm in his movie, so he was on a different level than me. And the only thing about Chevy that I remember specifically was he just didn't feel like an actor. He didn't think of himself as an actor. So he was trying, and he was battling his demons, as it were, with the drugs and things. But he was, I think, totally clean and proper during shooting a Fletch. And, and because Michael Ritchie, he doesn't put up with any crap. And Michael Ritchie would do this great thing. I remember the first scene where we would come into the library and Ritchie would say, okay, so the shot, you guys, you come in and then you walk over here. I think we walked off camera. And he said, now, Tim, okay, cut, print, that's great. Now we're going to do Tim's close-up at the door at the end of the scene, or maybe from another scene at another point. And he was picking off little pieces of the scene all over the place. So I think he did it partly, it certainly saves time, and that's a smart director. But I think it also, you've already shot the beginning and the end of the scene. And now you can't change it. Yeah. And I think he did that so Chevy was tied into doing what he wanted and what was in the script. And, it was, and if not, it worked that way anyhow. But knowing Michael Ritchie, who was always the smartest guy in the room, he probably did it.
How did Alan Stanwyk not know who Ted Nugent was?
I said, where did you get my suit, Mr. Nugent?
And Alan Stanwyk was not someone that left a great deal to chance, as we know.
Well, Alan wasn't the hippest guy in town, so.
And Google didn't exist, right?
That was my rationale.
I knew Gregory McDonald very well, the author of all the Fletch novels. Did you happen to run into him while you were on set? I was just wondering. I know he had visited the set when Chevy was there, but I didn't know if you had run into him as well.
I don't recall meeting him.
Yeah.
I honestly don't recall meeting him. I'm sure I would have if I'd been there, Again, I was just I dropped in maybe 4 or 5 times, and that was my part. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I worked with Dana Wheeler Nicholson anywhere else except for the house. I mean, I think that was the bulk of our stuff. It was all like wham, bam, thank you. It was just like it was.
Now you've become quite a seasoned director yourself. Is there anything that you could pinpoint from your own directing style that you maybe took from Michael Ritchie or?
Oh, I steal from the best. I mean, that's one of the great things about being an actor. You work with maybe hundreds of directors, or I was always interested in directing, and I'll never forget the advice one director gave me. He was a TV guy. He was one of those journeyman TV guys. He directed. This week he's doing Marcus Welby, and next week he's doing that some other Universal show. And he said, do you have any advice for a young director or somebody who wants to, he says, yep. Sit down every chance you get. Never run. Never run. Always just walk, because you'll just wear yourself out, and fire somebody the first day. Okay. This is a cutthroat thing. But, I think basically what he was saying, and I've heard other directors say it, sometimes they'll do, to get the attention of the crew, the first setup, the first scene they'll do is the most intricate, the most demanding, the most complex camera move and this and that. And just so everybody is like, holy crap, this guy's out of his mind, or she's out of her mind. This, the whole picture is going to be like this, will be a mess, because it was so demanding. So there a lot of directors, everybody's got their little tricks and things like that. I think for Michael Ritchie, I just prep. I mean, because I'm not as smart as Michael was. So I had to work harder. So what it inspired me to do was to spend days of arduous drawings of the scene and how I want to block it. And just when I first started directing, so that I would not be on the spot, and I think staging is the most important thing about directing, where the actors are in juxtaposition to each other to easily tell the story. And nobody's better at that than Steven Spielberg. And so, I study Steven's movies always. And I could speak to actors too, and so that those were my gifts about her hard work and knowing that I'm just like the coach on the sidelines, and you guys are the stars and the football players. You're out there mixing it up. I'm just here giving you, a little advice. Like if you go a little longer here and then button hook, you'll be wide open.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that's what a director really does, I think, is just sort of give advice. And I'm always a couple of times shocked when the actors go, yeah, okay, man, don't get it. It's like, okay, fine. It's just here for you, pal. I mean, it's whatever you want.
Kind of sets the tone.
Yeah, and and Michael Ritchie, that thing he did with Chevy, which is okay, Chevy, okay. Yeah, I know, because Chevy would come in, hey, what if we do this? What if we do, before we even start shooting? And Michael would say, okay, so that's all good. First, let's just do it like this. It's written like this, say that line, do that, just do this. And then we'll freewheel it. But we will get it this way, And I guess I don't know if they came to loggerheads about it or whatever happened, but by the time I got there, which may have been the second week of the production or third, I'm not sure, it was resolved that this is the way it's going to be. Michael won that battle, and that's why the movie's so good.
Do you find it surprising with the short amount of work that you did on it that it's still remembered, as fondly as it is today?
Oh, it's impressive, and it's a testament to both Michael Ritchie and Chevy Chase, and what a wonderful script it was, but you never know. You never know when you're doing a movie. I mean, I didn't even go to the premiere. I remember I was out of town or something, and I was like, it's okay. It'll come, it'll go. It's like, I hope it works, but geez, who knows? And but while you're shooting, you never know. I mean, I can't tell you how many movies I worked on that this is the one. It's like 1941. Yeah. No, maybe not.
Yeah, and I think even this podcast is a testament to how great Fletch is, because even when I put Bob and Jake together and gave them my Lombardi rah-rah speech of what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, deep down in my soul, I thought there was a very good possibility we were going to be broadcasting to our parents, friends, and a few Fletch fans. But as we put out these episodes and thousands of people download them, it's crazy. And it's a tribute to the longevity that 37 years later, there's still interest in these movies and these characters. And the phenomenon of Fletch is still alive. And you're a huge, huge part of what made Fletch so great.
Well, that's very nice of you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
When you talk about comedy history, Fletch certainly has a place.
Oh, absolutely. And Michael Ritchie was the kind of guy that I believe it might have been before Fletch. I had been doing a picture in Philadelphia and a movie that was never released called House of God. And it was, the director had a midlife crisis in the middle of it. It was a mess, And so anyway, I got back and I had a script from Buck Henry. It was a Buck Henry script about the White House. And I forget the name of it, but it was like Buck Henry. I mean, really. But I read it and it was just a series of, my character wasn't that important to it. And, and I said, no, I don't think it's for me. I think, well, let's try and find a leading role or something on that. And when I got back to LA, they said, oh, Michael Ritchie wants to have lunch with you and talk to you about this movie. So, okay. So I met him at the Bel Air Hotel because he lived right up the block from there. And he was so interesting the way he talked to me. He says, you should do this movie. I'm telling you, really, really, really should do this movie. And I went, yeah, okay, Michael, but it's this part and that part. He says, I understand, but just say you'll do the movie. And it's all going to be okay. And I said, well, I got to really have a passion for it. Just you should say you want to do this movie. And I said, I finally turned it down, through my agent. And then what happened was fade out, fade in. The movie never got made. And I happened to, at one point, lived next door to Michael. I bought a house up the block from him in Bel Air on Stone Canyon Road. And I said, and he said, you know why I wanted you to do that? Because I knew it was never going to get made and you'd get paid. And I said, Jesus, why did you tell me that? He said, no, that wouldn't have been right. So that was Michael Ritchie.
So we're hoping this year that the next Fletch movie will be released. It's production is done, and I think it's pretty much locked. with Greg Mottola and John Hamm as the new Fletch. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Oh, well, I love John Hamm. And he's such a smart actor. And he's such a good actor. My gut on him is he's not going to be doing Chevy Chase's Fletch. No. He's going to be doing John Hamm's Fletch. And I think that's why it's such a perfect casting choice, but I love his work. I remember Baby Driver and just the character stuff that he's done, sort of just to test his mettle as a character actor. And he's so funny in everything he does. I mean, he can be really funny or really straight or whatever. And so I think I applaud that. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
Who's playing Stanwyk? Or what are they?
No, what they're doing is they're doing the next book, Confess Fletch.
Oh, okay.
So they're so it's not a remake, so to speak, but just rebooting the series.
Oh, that's smart.
And they're gonna kind of play it closer to the book. The next book in the series of it would take place after your Fletch.
Okay.
Because I've loved the books and I've read them a million times. There are some other references to Stanwyk in some of the other books, posthumous, of course, but yeah.
He's not dead. He's not dead. He's smart to be dead, I think.
Did you do your own stunt there when you got shot? Do you remember, or did you have a stunt man? It looks like you.
I think it is me. I mean, I always, something like a bullet hit. It's one of those things.
I mean, you must have been wearing the explosive thing on your chest, and
you had the Lakers jersey on.
A squib. They put protection, between you and the squib, but the squib blows out. One hopes, and so, but they put something there just to protect you in case there's a mistake or an accident. And
was there something that jerked you backwards?
I think I did that. I think it was because I had grown up doing westerns and cowboy stuff on Bonanza and the Virginian and the Quest, and I fashioned myself a kind of stunt actor that I could do this stuff. So as I do recall, the stunt coordinator was there, and they really tell you how to do it, and then they're there between takes saying, okay, if you do this, it'll look better. And I go, okay, great,
Right.
So, and they might have in one scene, if they could, depending on the angle, they might have pulled it. You could put a jerk line on you, which kind of pulls you back. So
your arms go forward sort of when you get shot.
I think it probably was a jerk line, as I recall. And they do. Those guys are so good, and the stunt performers in Hollywood are so good that they'll take care of you. Make sure you don't get hurt. I was probably padded up, knees and elbows. I just they just make sure, and they make sure that you're not going. They don't want to hurt an actor.
Well, speaking of other people playing Fletch, today is actually David Bowie's birthday, and David Bowie was almost on the beach with you. Opposite Alan Stanwyk, yeah. So he was up for the role long before Chevy.
Oh my God, would that have been a?
What would it have been like?
I didn't want to do this, but I'm afraid I'm gonna have to pull rank on you. I'm with the mattress police. There are no tags on these mattresses. I'm gonna have to take you downtown. Now give me the weapon.
Laker Jim. You there, buddy? Laker Jim. Are you there?
Laker Jim.
Hello?
Yeah, sorry. I was listening.
Wow. I mean, I just think of Fletch being so iconically American. I don't know. I mean, would he have played with an American accent? Because David Bowie wasn't really per se an actor. He was a magical performer, but I never thought of it. And I've seen a lot of movies that he was in, but he really didn't. He wasn't a character actor. So it's not like Cumberbatch or the other Brits that could just. Olivia Colman can play anything. And the British actors are really good at doing American accents and here and there. Like in West Side Story, the guy who plays Tony, I think he's British. So it's like they're really good at doing this stuff. So it's like, okay. But I don't know about David Bowie. That would have been just wild.
I think of all the actors in the last 20 years prior to John Hamm that have been up for the role, and there have been many good ones. Jason Lee, Jason Sudeikis, a lot of good ones that I think could have pulled off a very good Fletch. I think the one that could have been the closest to the Chevy version would have been Ryan Reynolds. And he was offered the part, and I think he wisely turned it down because he knew it was a no-win situation.
And you've worked with him, right?
Oh yeah, I worked with Ryan, and I really, admire him. And he asked me a lot about Fletch and Animal House, and he's a real student of comedy. He asked me about working with Chris Farley, and about Belushi and about all those things. So it's no surprise to me that he is a huge star, and there are very few performers that can go big, because what happens is if you're not really good, it looks ham bone acting. It's like bad shtick acting. It's just like, and you're broadcasting how bad it is. Whereas I think Michael Ritchie's choice about, and what I was going to say was, and Ryan is one of those guys who can go big and do it, and there's Jim Carrey, and Belushi was that way. But Chevy, yeah, he was that way more, I think, in Clark Griswold than he was in Fletch. And Fletch, he played it like a real character. It wasn't thick. It wasn't, so I think it's important that any comedy that is done has to be firmly rooted in reality. So let me decide to choose what's funny. Don't tell me what's funny, and I think sometimes I've seen, you see a lot of comic movies, and this is and it's like, let me discover that, and it's like Animal House is that way. It's shot like a real movie. It's darker than a comedy movie. There was no shtick, just stuff going on, and it's played very straight. And there are just a few moments where we kind of wink at the audience, but the rest of it, you have to earn your right for that laugh. And I think that Michael Ritchie was, instrumental in getting that from Chevy and keeping him real so that he wasn't doing shtick.
Maybe that's why Fletch has aged so well over the last almost 40 years.
Yeah.
We have played the Siskel and Ebert review of Fletch years and years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember Siskel playing the scene with you and Chevy and saying, Chevy actually, or the character of Fletch, was scared in that. There was definitely some tension in that. I mean, did you feel that? Did you enjoy that part of it?
Yeah, I did. I mean, because Chevy was a real character, and I think Michael Ritchie helped him with that. And Michael was the guy that would point out Chevy, Fletch in this situation is kind of confused and scared, and he would get that from him. And not to discount anything with Chevy, I mean, he probably wanted to stretch himself as an actor too, and to really go to different places and play different levels of it.
Well, I think you're really good because you can play both sides. I mean, so the Stanwyk role is pretty straight.
Yeah.
And you were okay with that.
Yeah. I mean, it was, and I wasn't going to compete with Chevy he was really the straight man, in most of those scenes, you have to be the straight man, but I wanted to be true to the character who lived in a house like that, and was deviously, confounding this plot, to hang it all on him.
Here's my proposition. I'm all ears.
I want you to murder me. It's always more fun to be, it's the comic than the straight man. It's right. Always more fun. I mean, and you look back at all of them, with the exception of Laurel and Hardy, a lot of, and Burns and Allen. I mean, Abbott and Costello, I don't think got along, and Lewis and Martin and Lewis obviously can get along, and it just, there's a point you get to it. It's like, all right, enough of this. I mean, you're not going to get to laugh unless I help you. So just throw me a friggin' bone here,
I mean, you've worked with some of the absolute great physical comedians of all time. Lucille Ball, Chris Farley, Ryan Reynolds, Chevy Chase, John Belushi. I mean, you certainly earned your chops.
Well, thanks. I mean, I just want to, I'm not one of those people who can go too big. I mean, I've tried it on occasion and it's like, it's dangerous territory. And it has to be like with, say, Ace Ventura or something that Jim Carrey does, it has to be based on character. That this is who this guy is. He just, we happen to find it funny, but he's just crazy, or he just sees the world this way. And Ryan Reynolds has the ability to do that, and quite a few others. And I'm really interested to see what John Hamm's going to do this.
Yeah, we are too.
Yeah, we're super excited.
You've never worked with?
No, I haven't. Right? Who directed the new Fletch?
Greg Mottola. He did Superbad
and I think he's worked with John Hamm before, has he not?
He has, yes.
Yeah. So I mean, they got the language down, and I know that part of the way they do is improv stuff and try this line, go throw, you throw a line off from off stage, and I'm sure that'll be pretty good.
Alan Stanwyk had 2 wives.
Yeah.
Dana Wheeler Nicholson played one, Gail Stanwyk. The other's name was Sally Ann Kavanaugh.
Sure.
But who was the actress that played Sally Ann Kavanaugh? She's not credited. She appears in a photograph with you several times in the movie. Is that a real photo? Did you guys really take that photograph?
No, I think, no, we definitely took it. I do believe.
It was a picture like at your wedding, at the wedding. Yeah.
Right. I mean, you'd have to, they could have just stuck my head on it. Possible. They got the picture in, and then just laid it in there. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the shadows.
But it's no one you recognize. No one you recognize. It's so weird that she's not credited.
I know. It's weird.
You know what's great about Alan Stanwyk? In both wedding photos,
thumbs up.
You're doing thumbs up.
That's right.
It's you and the thumbs up in both wedding photos.
Art imitating life, I think, right?
Hey, I know you only worked with her a little bit, but how was Dana Wheeler Nicholson and working with her?
She was lovely. She was just lovely. And I believe it was one of her earliest roles. I mean, I don't think she had done it a lot, and she was very excited to be, the love interest in this movie, but couldn't have been nicer to work with, and couldn't have been sweeter.
She looks like a hooker. Look at her. Look at her. Could you love someone who looked like that?
What are you talking about? Of course not. 5, 10 minutes tops, maybe.
And I thought she was very good. And I actually was directing a TV show in Dallas.
Mm-hmm. She lives here in Austin. I'm in Austin, and I believe she lives here in Austin.
Right. She's down there, and maybe she came up for the audition or whatever it was. And, we just caught up on what her life was down there. But what a lovely woman. Lovely, lovely woman.
I got to ask how it was working with Farley.
Well, Chris Farley was so generous and so kind to me. He revered Animal House. He revered Belushi. And I remember I came into audition, and I don't recall whether he was there or he came in. But he came in just to say, "I love you. I think you're so great. You're just," and I'm auditioning here, so I don't have any part yet, but he just made me feel so relaxed and at home that, when I showed them this is, we can certainly play this, but I think he was there to show that we could be brothers, and it worked. And he couldn't have been more gracious and sweet. And he was totally straight and clean when we worked together. And, but what a generous man in the scenes. He was constantly, he was in character. But I can remember between takes, we had one scene where there were like 150 extras and background artists, and it was a political rally that I was giving outside and we were shooting in Calabasas, I think it was. And between takes, he'd get up and he would entertain them. and just do bits for them, strip tease or whatever, he just couldn't help himself. He loved entertaining people and making people laugh. And to be that generous to the background artists who usually are just ignored and just stand around and for hours and, out in the hot sun. And he was just lovely. And some of my favorite things are we did a bunch of photographs one day to show our history as football players, and this and that.
Yeah.
Right. And just hanging out with him for that amount of time, it made me feel like part of the team. It wasn't like, oh, well, I'm Chris Farley and you're some, guy that's going to be my brother. He made us brothers, and allowed that to happen. He was just, and God, he was funny. He was just so funny.
And I think that comes across. On your side, the love you have for him.
Good.
That you feel it, that love that you only have for family, your brother,
Yeah. Yeah. It was such a loss. I mean, he was sober when we shot, as I said, but he smoked more cigarettes and drank more cups of coffee than anyone I've ever seen. And he would drink like an iced coffee. I know this sounds crazy, but before every take, as I recall it, and I just, because every scene, you only do like 5-6 scenes a day. That's not a big deal. They drink 5 cups of coffee. He would drink like down it, glug, glug, before every take of his close-up say. And, so he'd drink 3 or 4 of them. And so you can see that he had a compulsive personality and smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee. And, so when we finished, I think I saw him after that at the premiere or some publicity or something, and he wasn't as sober as he could, he was off the wagon. I just thought if he ever goes back off the wagon, this is going to be dangerous, because I could see how addicted he was to caffeine and nicotine, so it was a tragedy and a heartbreak when we lost him so young.
Did Belushi come to mind with when he passed, when Chris Farley passed? I mean, did you think of Belushi and the similarities maybe?
Yeah, I mean, the thing with John was he was a first to TV star, megastar, then he was a movie star, and then he was a record star. So it's like the triple whammy, it's like hitting the jackpot. But I was just around. I think rock and roll is a tougher business than the movie business. The movie business, you get up at 4:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, you work all day. Lucky if you can grab a nap at lunch, and then you work 12-hour days, 14-hour days, and then you got to go home and work on the material you're going to do the next day, and then try and get through 3 to 5 hours sleep, and then get up and do it again. So it's a grind. It can be a grind, and you really have to be focused, and you can't party. Whereas with rock and roll, you do a show from 7 to 10 at night in front of 15, 20,000 people, like the Blues Brothers would do at the Universal Amphitheater. And I don't think it was that big. It was probably 2,500 people there, maybe. But I went and saw him there doing that. And then I saw him afterwards. And I was approaching him, somebody stopped me, and it was Smokey or whatever. I think his name was Smokey, the bodyguard. Or no, it was another bodyguard. There was Smokey was always next to John, and to protect him. And the guy with me looked over at Smokey, and Smokey looked at John, and John saw me and nodded, yeah. So they let me through. But that's how you had to protect John, because people were always giving him drugs. It was always something, come on, man, I want to, and his persona was a party animal. It was Bluto, crush a beer can and glug, 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 and so people believe that, and he lived it. He lived it. I mean, you definitely would party after you did a concert like that, because you're so keyed up. And I think that triple whammy of the stardom and all those feels, but especially in music. I mean, because they had the Rolling Stones come on SNL, and they had all these hot bands and big bands, and everybody was doing drugs back then. So it was like,
And talk about life imitating art or art imitating life. I mean, that he died at the same age as his idol, John Belushi.
Totally. I mean, he was being John Belushi, and the weight he had on, and the Belushi was a little bit heavy too, and it's like you can't be too thin, and those guys. It's like Oliver Hardy, Roland Hardy.
Yeah,
he's fat. He's the fat. You're funny if you're fat, And I think there was a little bit of that, and they, we've seen. I worked with Sam Kinison, and John Candy. And there were performers that's part of their persona. That's who they are, and you laugh at the fat guy. It's an old trope, but that's they can like Mr. Hulot's Holiday. They are the ones that can make fun of themselves and allow us to laugh at them.
The tragic clown.
Yeah, exactly right.
I know we talked a lot about Fletch, but I gotta ask you about Animal House because I quote it all the time too. And just talk a little bit about. My brother, I texted my brother that we were talking to you, and he immediately texted me back and with a quote, "Don't kid yourself, Otter. It wasn't that great." But that's the first thing he said. It's just a classic. I'm sure you're just you consider yourself blessed, being in that. And all these years later, the fact that I still watch it all the time. It's great.
Yeah, well, thank you. It holds up so well because we played it straight. John Landis is a remarkable director. It was certainly then, and everybody, and again, they surrounded Belushi with real actors. And I can remember the first night John came into town, what happened was they brought all of the Deltas up to Eugene first, a week early for rehearsal. We never really rehearsed. We never, we would just hang out. And so like the first night that we were all there, we're sitting around a big, long table, and in comes Belushi, and I think Judy was with him too, his wife. And he was just one of us. He didn't, he wasn't some big movie TV star coming in, and, and I think what I'd heard was that he looked around the room, he said, "Oh my God, look at these guys are real actors. I got to get my stuff together to do this. I'm not going to be able to, just waltz through this." And he was nervous. And for me, he could not have been more generous. This was my first comedy. They didn't want me for the part. I had to beg and borrow and steal an audition to get in. And then they liked it. But they said, no, he's a cowboy or a surfer. He's not preppy. No. I'd never done a comedy. So I was just incredibly nervous. And here's John Belushi, who was the hottest guy on TV. We would walk through the University of Oregon, and the students' reaction to him, because everyone loved Saturday Night Live. It was the second year, I believe. And it was like, you just thought, well, they revered him, and they'd shout lines at him, and from his, killer bees or whatever, but he was never intimidating to work with. He, when I had a joke, if I had a moment that was supposed to be a joke, or I try something, he was right there and supportive. And because back then there used to be this sort of New York, LA kind of competition. Those Hollywood are pretty boys. They can't act. In New York, we're real actors. We work on theater. We pay some dues. We wait tables. Hollywood people. You're just shallow, skin deep people. But there was none of that from Belushi. And and much of the cast was from New York. So I think me and Stephen First were the only two from LA. Riegert was LA and New York, but there was that whole week we were together was really very sort of element. It was an element of us coming together as a group, so that when we had scenes together, because we shot much of the fraternity house stuff in the first week. And so, that's kind of the core heart of the movie. And, Belushi was great though, but because he'd always stay in character, he'd be in character for those scenes and be funny. And I do remember watching him shoot we did the cafeteria scene.
Oh.
I swear it was one take. He walked down there and started eating all of it.
Gosh.
And it was just him, you know. I mean, yeah, there's certain props to golf ball, obviously. You know,
Yeah.
and just squeezing that.
Guess what I am now. Oh,
It was so much fun, but again, so real.
Tim, you mentioned the audition process, and it's something that we always love to discuss too. We have a couple actor friends of ours that are, character actors, and they tell us they see the same guys for every audition sitting in the room. Who was when you did have to audition, who were those guys in the room where you're like, who was competing for your parts pretty much? Like,
well, I learned early on. I mean, I'm trying to think, but I mean, I was a kid actor too. So I was, how I like to describe it, was the third kid through the door. I was not the lead guy. I was not the lead guy's pal. I was like the guy with one or two lines, and the kid with one or two lines. And they had, I think, Dennis the Menace, the series, had just come on the air, and this kid, Jay North, he was always on every audition. Yeah. So it was me, Jay North, Ricky Kellman. I mean, I forget all these guys, Tony Dow, I don't know.
Tony Dow, that's great, from the Beaver. Yeah.
That's right. And so all of a sudden, Jay North is a huge TV star. He's on the cover of TV Guide, and this Dennis the Menace, he's a star. And he was just 2 weeks ago, was in on the auditions with us, And then I don't think the show lasted but 1 year, maybe two. And I believe it was only one. And then all of a sudden, going on an audition, here's Jay North sitting over there, And you could tell it was awkward for him. And first, now he has to go back and audition. Why don't they just offer the part to him? And it was sort of a primer for me about, man up. This is the tough business here. It's like, you got to take the good with the bad, and you take your lumps. But, I think the guy, Kurt Russell, was always somebody I would run into. And he was funny. He'd always said, I'm terrible at auditions. I can't audition. Jesus, God, if I have to audition that, I'll never work. And, but he's a wonderful actor and a very funny guy and an old buddy. But I don't remember. I mean, Jeff Bridges. I remember I was auditioning for, it must have been 18, because you had the biggest attribute you could have to audition for the Hardy Boys, this TV pilot they were making over at 20th Century Fox, was you had to have a draft deferment, because this was back in 68, maybe 66 perhaps. And so I at that point had a deferment, and they were doing the test, and there must have been 10 guys testing for Frank and Joe Hardy. They put two of them together, and this guy would do two tests with two different brothers, and I was going to be in the later group, and so I'm wandering around just focusing, and I'm staying outside the stage because I don't want to watch anybody doing the scenes. And then at some point it's getting later and later, and I walk back inside, and I hear the director and the AD, the first AD, talking about it. He said, well, I think after this one we're done. And I said, whoa. I haven't done it yet. I mean, it's like I've been here all day, and I'm on the list. Oh, yeah, right, okay, right. and Fortune smiled, and I got the job. But it was like, it was Jeff Bridges, and just an assortment of the young actors in Hollywood at the time. And when I was under contract to Universal doing the Virginian and in the 3 years that followed, there were a lot of young actors that I worked with that some are gone now, and you could just see that they weren't serious about it. I mean, they did it for the different reasons. I did it because, like, when I was under contract at Universal, after I did the Virginian, I had 2 years of a contract where I was getting paid. I was put in every Universal TV show that they made, but I was studying. I had Shakespeare class, I had fencing, I had dance class, I had vocal training and Stanislavski training and classical theater training. So I was doing everything I could to get my Juilliard type training here in LA, because I couldn't afford to quit and go to Juilliard, you know, and probably wouldn't have let me in, or Lambda or RADA in England. So I tried to take advantage of that, and I think shortly after that I went down to the Shakespeare Festival in San Diego, played Romeo and Romeo and Juliet, and and that's the kind of thing that helped me. You know, when you can muscle through a season of rep and play 2 or 3 characters, 8 times a week, you build certain muscles as an actor that are important to have. Not everybody needs that, and not every you don't have to do theater, but I find it very difficult to do now because I don't like working 6 days a week. That's BS. You know what? I mean,
well, you've earned your keep. So, I forgot that you did Johnny Quest. I used to watch that when I was a kid back on Cartoon Network. Do you remember anything about that? And then, like you said, Bonanza, you were like right at the end of Bonanza, weren't you? Right before it ended?
Oh, I killed that show.
I doubt that. It was at a lengthy run.
I was in the last episode they filmed.
Okay.
And we were just wrapping an episode. And then me and an actress named Karen Carlson, we were shooting the scene, and when we finished it, AD said, "Hold on now, Michael Landon wants to come in, and he wants to talk to everybody." And Michael comes in, and news cameras were there, and it's like, "What is this? What is this?" And he said, "You know what, guys? I have terrible news. I have to tell you that NBC has canceled Bonanza. This is our last episode. This was the last scene of the last episode of Bonanza."
Wow.
And he loved the men and women who worked on that show. And Karen Carlson was there. And Karen was married to David Soul. That's who it was. And then Michael did what only he could do to try and liven the moment. He said, "Okay, this is the end of Bonanza, and I just want to say I love you all, and go with God," or something like that. And all of a sudden, somebody steps out into frame on a camera holding a shotgun pointed at Michael and pulls the trigger and goes kaboom, and he's on a jerk line, and boom, and he flies back through the door. And this is it was like, this is the end of Little Joe. Boom.
Little Joe gets blown away.
Ended with a laugh, and that was Michael Landon. He was wonderful. Great. So yeah, I was lucky enough. And Johnny Quest, I was 15 when I auditioned for it. I'd done a little bit of voiceover, maybe, a few things here and there. It was the tail end of radio. I'd done a couple of radio dramas that they still had on the air on the weekends or something. And but I went in, auditioned for Johnny Quest, never heard anything. I mean, 4 months later, I don't know however heck long it was. And then finally they said, "Yeah, you're going to start, you got the part and you're going to start recording." And it was like, okay. And what happened is we all the actors together. It was like the old days of radio, where all the actors would be there with script in their hand in front of a microphone. Mm-hmm. And there's a glass wall where the producer and the director were and the technicians. And then you played it like a stage play, you just played it. And I was very intimidated. I mean, I got to work with some of the best actors I've ever worked with because these guys could do it all. I mean, Mel Blanc, Don Messick, June Foray, Alan Reed. I mean, all these people, Mel Blanc could play a scene between 2 characters and be both voices. I mean, and I would try and do other voices. They'd say, "Yeah, you want to let Tim do another voice," because there's like 1 or 2 lines, and I'd come up with a voice, but I'd have a hard time remembering what that voice was if it came up later. I mean, I could do me because I'm Johnny Quest, but the other character, whatever it was, I'd forget what I was doing, and they say, "Oh, take that one again, Tim. Here, let's play back what you did. Now do it like that." And then the other guys were such pros. I mean, it was a great education. for me to see how skilled and talented they were, and wonderful people. Just pros, though. They were pros.
Have you kept any props from any of your productions, any of your films?
Have I? A couple. I've got a Johnny Quest cell over here that Joe Barbera gave me at one point, but yeah, I mean, I've got scripts. I've got the Animal House script, the original one. I've got a couple of T-shirts. I have a T-shirt from 1941 that Spielberg had handed out that says, "I will not make this movie if it costs a penny more than $14 million." And we spent $80 million. I don't know.
Right.
And it was his ironic way of saying, "Okay, well, that was the good intentions."
Right.
I like 1941. I like that movie.
Oh, listen, I mean, Steven can't make a bad movie. I mean,
yeah,
I think in terms of comedic movies, you just have so many people doing the same kind of comedy. Animal House had everybody, you've got Flounder and
you got Bluto,
Pinto.
Yeah,
they're Laurel and Hardy, and I'm sort of Cary Grant, or I don't know, and Peter Rieger's kind of like Groucho, and everybody's a little bit different. Belushi's they're like in a silent comedy. They're like in a silent movie, he and D-Day. So in 1941, I remember Danny Aykroyd, who I knew slightly from the Blues Brothers and all that. Remember we were standing around the set one day, and here's me and Aykroyd and Candy and John Candy and all these comedy actors, and he goes, Steven's driving us around. It's like driving a Ferrari in a bumper car. It's sort of being treated like that. It's like he didn't let us do or let them do what they could do. And everybody was kind of doing this big, broad stuff, and fortunately I had, a part where I could play it pretty real, within the bounds of what he was trying to get. But I knew when I took that part, I said, well, they can just cut this sucker out of the movie. Mm-hmm. Could be the first thing to go if it's long. And fortunately, that for me, it didn't go. But I loved working with Steven. I mean, he couldn't have been kinder, gentler, and more supportive. If I had an idea for a shot, I said, what if we shot it? Would you ever shoot something like that? He said, let's do that. Let's do it. Put the camera here. Let's do that.
That's
great. He was
wow.
Just really, really a wonderful guy. And but I don't know that served the material well. It was, God, I mean, I would follow Toshiro Mifune around and watch him work. And then, Slim Pickens was there, and Warren Oates, and, just all Robert Stack, and, and you'd see how those people were working. I mean, Stack played it totally straight. Mm-hmm. But that was an adventure. I mean, that was like my first big budget movie. And it was like, oh my God, I think we worked on it for 6 months. I had been offered, I don't talk about it very much, but I'd been offered the movie Airplane, and I couldn't do it.
Oh,
because I was still shooting this movie and forever.
the Robert Hayes part in Airplane.
Yeah.
And Robert Stack was in that, and he played it straight. Yeah. Stack played it really straight in that too.
Yeah, and
that goes.
Robert Hayes was great.
And that goes back to like we were just having that discussion that Chevy Chase actually turned down the role of Forrest Gump before it was, offered to Tom Hanks. So imagine what that would have been. I can't even begin to think about what that would have been.
The actor for that. I mean, I don't think he could. I mean, you got to be a real film actor to do that part, and it's all about restraint.
Yeah.
He was just very, very restrained, and he had a limited emotional range, I think, except for inside. And somebody as wonderful as Tom Hanks, with all that heart being held back is what sort of breaks your heart about Forrest Gump.
Now, is Fletch a movie that when you are recognized or somebody comes up to you, how often does Fletch get brought up as the movie they love you in?
Fletch, I mean, yeah, I get The West Wing, I get Animal House, certainly, Johnny Quest occasionally. I mean, the funny thing is to go to Comic-Con, and see, oh my God, and you don't know what they're on about, and Fletch is a good number of the occasions people come up. I mean, it does resonate for a lot of people, and especially film geeks, they eat it up.
Yeah.
You talked about not getting or not being able to do Airplane. Has there been any role that you maybe had turned down or decided not to do that you regret?
Yeah, there are stupid periods or choices you make that you go through, or where you're just too busy. And one of the things about Hollywood is like you work, and then finally you finish a gig. I was doing this series at Fox called Tucker's Witch, which wasn't terribly good, with Catherine Hicks, and God, we did, I don't know, 15 episodes or whatever, and it was exhausting. And I finished with that, and then they sent me a script. My agent did, and said, they're offering you this character. It's kind of a romantic comedy, the detective thing, and I just had done it, and I said, Jesus, I don't know. I mean, really, with Sybil Shepherd, geez.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Yeah. Okay.
So Moonlighting. Yeah. But you know what? It would have been an entirely different thing. I mean, because Bruce Willis is just magic, and his blue collar. I typically didn't play blue collar, and so it would have been a different dynamic. Would it have worked? Yeah, I would have worked, my butt off to make sure it worked. But that's one, but the reasons were like, I'm exhausted. I want to go rafting. I want to take a vacation. I don't want to go back and do Jesus, but it was admittedly great writing and a great script, but there were those occasions too, where you just fall out of favor or you're third on the list. I remember doing, reading about the Police Academy movies, scripts, the first Police Academy. And I want to be in that movie. That's the movie I want to be in. And they don't think you're right. They don't, I don't know, whatever. It's not going to happen. Or I'm in the mix, but we're going to, and I got offered a movie called Up the Creek, which I was like, okay, it's okay. It needs another rewrite, and depends on what the director does and who the director is. But, and so I get Up the Creek, and I didn't get Police Academy. And it's, it was just being in a movie, which you said was almost a good script and almost a really good movie. But there were just elements that weren't gelling, it wasn't going to, and it, it worked out okay, but it wasn't, wasn't one of the great comedies.
It's amazing how you mentioned Comic-Con, people come up with all crazy things. The third guy, our other co-host, Bob, believe it or not, when he thinks of you, he thinks of you from, his family was big Disney people. They went to Disney every year. You were part of a ride called Body Wars.
Yes.
Control, this is Bravo 229er. We're under the skin. Everything looks fine.
Roger.
Folks, directly in front of us is a group of white blood cells on their way to destroy the splinter. There it is now.
Yeah. Leonard Nimoy directed it.
Yes, you were such a big part of his childhood because every year when he went to Disney, you were part of Body Wars. So, those little things that maybe you decide to take or not take or whatever,
absolutely,
they impact so many people that you don't realize it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's so true. I mean, you never know, and you never know what you're going to do that's going to work. And, and everything you work on while you're making it this is one of the great, this is going to be great. I'm going to be great. I mean, that was sort of why I became a director. I got paid to look at movies. Any show I was doing, I'd find any movie that would reference what I was shooting. I would look at it because Lucas always did that. I mean, on Star Wars, he's looking at World War II movies, dogfights between American and Japanese planes and German, and miming that in with his spacecraft. So you steal from the best.
My wife loves Virgin River.
Oh, good. I love that.
I mean, she loves it, and I know you've done 3 seasons, and you've got 4, at least a couple more coming up, right?
We've shot. I don't know that I'm supposed to say this. We filmed number 4, season 4, and we will be coming back for season 5 and starting production in mid-summer or mid-year. And what's great about it for me is it's such a real simple character. But we have a great writer, Sue Tenney, who runs the show, and all of a sudden you'll get a script, an episode where it reveals. There was one this past season. I won't tell you. I won't reveal any spoilers, but it revealed so much about my background that I had never known about. It was like just in one scene, I'm talking to somebody about my past and what happens, and it became very emotional. And it was like, you just get gems like that. She's really good. And Doc Mullins is the character I play there. And he's just one of those simple, straight ahead guys, sort of dedicated his life to taking care of people and wants to take care of people. And the problem of being a doctor in a small town is everybody. You know every patient. More than likely, you know them. And so you have an emotional attachment to them. So you can't let that cloud your medical advice or work, but oftentimes it does, perhaps, or it becomes involved, it gets involved in it. So it's really, and also Alex Breckenridge and Martin Henderson are just so wonderful that we're all ornaments on that tree, around them. And then they're just such the heart of the show. But it's just, it's a treat and a joy to do.
Well, she loves it. So.
Oh, good.
What's the secret to your longevity? You've been doing it for so many years.
I love it. I just love it. I'm more at home on a set. I mean, I came out of a broken home and used to sit in the movies all weekend long, bemoaning the fate of my parents' marriage and, oh, poor me and all this. And fell in love and felt supported and cared for by the movies. I'd watch these great movies and that's when I remember seeing Witness for the Prosecution with Charles Lawton. And I said, that's what I want to do. I want to do what he's doing there, And I think there's comfort in it, watching something that never changes. You go over and over, you can see it 10 times and it's right there for you. So, but it's always been that way. I mean, I remember the first day on the first job I had. It was called Window on Main Street, a Robert Young series about a famous writer comes back to his hometown and writes stories about all the townspeople. It was not a successful show. It lasted 1 season, 36 episodes. And I came in, and I'm from a lower middle class background, so we don't have much money. And I come in, I get made up, and I go on the set. And the set is his hotel suite, which is it's like an old Victorian kind of thing with a big marble fireplace. And God, it was just ornate. And I was like, wow, I'm in the Ritz. And I'm just like a little kid just looking around, and there's marble fireplace. And I walk up to the marble fireplace and I stick my hand out and touch it. And it's not marble. It's plywood with paper on it that looks like marble. And I just went, oh my God, it's not real. It's all been fake. And I said, that's great. Because it only has to look real for that long.
Yeah.
It's you gotta bring marble in here to do it. And it was really kind of a life lesson for me. I wasn't disappointed at all. I was heartened by it. I thought, well, that's really smart. That's pretty good.
Well, Tim, I can't thank you enough for all your time. And let's not wait another 23 years before we do another interview.
Great. This was a lot of fun. Thanks for giving me time to just spout out about a lot of.
Do you have any final words for the Fletch fans out there listening who love you?
Well, yeah, just with fingers crossed that John Hamm brings it home. I'm so excited to see him do that because I just adore him as a performer, and Mottola is, perfect guy to do it, and they'll do it for the right reasons and make it their own. So, and I think that would be a great honor to this show, to the original, right. And yeah, don't get caught trying to do Chevy.
Well, you're a legend, and we really appreciate your time, and you're such a huge part of the film, and it's so nice of you to take a few minutes or 90.
That was fun to talk about. It brings back great memories. Thank you very, very much, and congratulations on your show. It's wonderful.
Thanks, Tim. Bob, what do you think of that?
I couldn't be more upset that I missed out. That was so great. What a great guy.
Yeah, he really was. To give us that kind of time, and honestly, he told us, off recording that how much Fletch means to him and how much the fans mean to him. Wow. So it was really nice. I'll pull the curtain back a little more. 5 minutes before our interview with Tim Matheson, Jake's microphone died.
Oh,
can't get it back.
Yes.
We tried everything. We restarted the computers. We restarted the system. We restarted the Zoom. It was like utter panic. Jake came back audio wise a minute before our interview with Tim Matheson.
Yeah, it had to be divine intervention or something.
The only thing I can think of was the maker himself, Gregory McDonald, reached down and reconnected your audio for that. That's the only explanation.
That's a very nice thought, and I'll go with that.
On that note, we are going to end this episode of Fletchcast. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed our interview with the former VP of Boyd Aviation. I'd like to once again thank Tim Matheson. We really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for your time. If you haven't checked out his show, Virgin River, yet, please do so. It's streaming on Netflix. We just started watching it, and we're hooked. If you're a fan of Tim Matheson, you're going to love it. He stars in it. He directs it. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast. You'll be doing me and my family a great service. We're not sure how, but it helps the podcast grow. Follow us on social media. We're at IMFletchcast, the letter I, the letter M, Fletchcast. If you want to follow Tim Matheson, he's at Tim L. Matt, TIMLMATT on Instagram. We want to hear from you. Don't forget to call the Fletchcast hotline. The number is 267-714-6799. And don't worry about writing it down. It's listed everywhere. If you follow us, you can call in. We want to hear from you. The line is open 24/7. Call in with ideas, suggestions, comments, questions, or Jake, or Bob, for Tim Matheson, for the band Laserfang. I'm Liquor Jim. I think we're all going to go catch the last 10 minutes of Dynasty. See ya.
Congratulations. Thank you, Control. Folks, you can unlatch your safety belt by pushing the button on your left. Please exit the ship to your right. Don't forget your personal belongings. Oh, and welcome home.